we are suffering from an identity epidemic. Majority of people do not know who they are. Majority of people do not know who they stand for or what they stand for. That's why it's comfortable, or they are comfortable identifying as a depressed person, because at least depression gives them some sort of identity, you know. So it's most advantageous for them to say they are depressed, because when you're depressed, you get affiliated with a certain kind of community. And when you're in such community, you guys take turns every Wednesday or Thursday to listen to each other talk about how sad you are and how difficult it is to live. So the human species, we function based on attention. Everybody wants attention. No matter who you are, you want some kind of validation. And when you're put in a spot, when you go from being purposeless, having no aim, having no drive, to a person who others now listen to just because you diagnose yourself as a depressed person, then it becomes more difficult to leave that depression. Majority of people will say, I want to stop being depressed. But the reality of it is they are self-sabotaging themselves from taking those actions that will translate them from a depressed person to a fine person. But the challenge now becomes, if I translate from depressed to being okay, what then becomes my purpose? What then becomes my identity? Who am I? You know, majority of people do not know who they are, and they don't know how to discover themselves, because identity, as you know, it is not something you can read up from a book. It's something that you have to discover for yourself, because we are the same humans but infinite personalities. So what necessarily applies for me might not work for you. You see, in my own time when I was trying to discover who I was, yeah, I would pick up all these books or try different personalities. But you notice with that, by trying to be different people, by trying to be something you're not, you gain external acceptance but for internal conflict, because there's this thing you can't explain, but you know that this is not who you are. You know you're meant for something more. You know that you're just putting on a facade so that you can gain acceptance. So how do you go about finding this identity? You find your identity when you find your purpose. They are intertwined. Majority of people go for identity, but if you find your purpose, you get identity. So if you find number one, you get number two. If I say Ronaldo, what comes to your mind? Football, greatest of all time. If I say Kobe Bryant, what comes to your mind? Basketball. So you see these people, their skill or their purpose have now become their identity. So they've honed their skill such that it's now meshed with their identity. The lesson and the morale that you can take from that is, once you develop yourself, once you develop your purpose, it now becomes your identity. Because if you've been following me long enough, there's this thing I talk about: you can't learn a skill by learning a skill. You have to develop so many subsets of other skills that accumulate to that skill you're trying to learn. Take sales, for instance. If I say go learn sales, you can't learn sales without learning communication skills, tonality, body language, etc. Discipline, having to make the discipline to make 100 cold calls days, having the tenacity not to give up. So there are so many micro skills you learn during that journey that comes and formulates a new identity, a new kind of character. Majority of you people are not ready to undergo this kind of transformation, which is not the class I'm talking to. I'm talking to that few select of human beings who are ready to change their life, who are ready for something big. Yeah, those are the kind of people who should listen to me. And if you do not fit into that description, click next. Yeah, so if you develop a skill, once you find your purpose, once you keep developing your purpose, you get an identity. So it all comes down to, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't even know what to do. I can't find my basketball. I can't find my football. So what do I do next? Yeah, so before we move on, let's define purpose and what it is. Purpose basically is, Some people say purpose is passion. Some people say purpose is your God given assignment. But I define purpose as that which gives you fulfillment, that which you can look forward to getting up to. How can you discover this purpose? Let me make something clear. If you leave this earth without impacting someone's life, you effectively never existed. If you leave this earth without impacting someone else's life positively, you effectively never existed. So you can see your purpose by looking outwards, not necessarily outwards, but when you see something that resonates with you, the moment you see something that someone else is doing, that instantly gets you excited, that becomes your purpose. It might not be a straight path, just like podcasters, for instance. You see a podcast host, and anytime he asks one of these insightful questions, immediately you get excited because that's something you know you can do. So if you see something that someone else is doing, try to cultivate that skill, and more tools will be found along the journey. It's not found at the initial stages of the journey, it's along the journey. Your answers are somewhere along the journey. So if you do not begin the journey, you would never find them. Like, think of it like a game, for instance. As you level up, you gain more power ups. The atmosphere is different, the levels are different, but the objective still remains the same. The destination is constant. So just trust the process, trust the journey, and that you arrive at your predefined destination. And as you go, you find out that the initial thing you were developing was not that which your purpose will fixate on. Do not fight it, do not try to remain there. Like our video game example, the atmosphere changes as you scale upwards in level. So do not fight it. Try to go with the flow. Try to go with the change. Now, I'm not saying you should pivot. I'm not saying you should give up or change at every slightest opposition. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there are these small micro changes that you can make along the way. Say for instance, you were a journalist, and as you were going through the journalism, or as you were working for someone, all of a sudden your company became corrupt and their journalism was no longer objective. You decide to start a YouTube channel that is based off of objective journalism. Do not fight it. Start your YouTube channel, pivot, go forward. Yeah. So that's a very classical example. Yeah, and I believe with these few tweaks, I do not want to make this unnecessarily long. I believe with this few information, you will be able to, you know, get a grasp of what you're doing. So, as always, friends, pleasure speaking to you. I'll see you in the next.